What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Early Edge. We've got our Sunday night football kickoff show. We know now, we didn't know it during our NFL kickoff show at 12 o'clock. We didn't know that the Bills were definitely in the playoffs. We do know that now. We know that the Bills and Dolphins, they're playing for AFC East supremacy. Listen, it's been an exciting day. I got to be honest. I was wondering, is Justin Fields going to do anything in this game against what I thought was a bad Packers defense? I had that bet. I know Larry had that bet on the Bears +3. So I'm a little disappointed going into this game, but I love the takes from our crew, especially on the Bills side. A lot of props. Let's go ahead and bring them in. The stars of the show. Everyone, thank you for being in here in the chat. We've got Danny Brasco. We've got Ken's. We've got Proppy. We've got Mike McClure. Let's get it started with the BetMGM odds. Let's just start right there because this line has been fluctuating a little bit. We've seen it at Bills -3. We've seen it at Bills -2.5. Now it's Bills -2. So certainly some money coming in on the home team. Not altogether surprising, but I got to say, Ken's, I'm going to lead with you because I look at the inactives, which we're going to flash up in just a second, thanks to Jake the Snake on the ones and twos. Everybody in the chat, please put in there. Good job, Jake. He is absolutely crushing it on each and every show. But, Ken's, I look at the inactives on the Dolphins side, and, I see Xavier Howard. Well, that's not good. I see Jalen Waddle. That's not good that he's not playing. And we know that there's some edge rushers out. Raheem Mostert not in this game. He's on that inactive list as well. So I wonder, just from a model standpoint, because I know the SportsLine model accounts for these injuries, what is it saying about this game, knowing the context here with so many people injured?
Yeah, and it's absolute chaos of injuries in this game in general. But if you had everyone 100%, we ran what the sim would have been. And if the Dolphins were 100% healthy, we would have made them 2-point favorites. So if you want to quantify that, you're looking at about a 4-point swing of injuries that are affecting this game, which is pretty major considering none of them are a quarterback. So that's a lot of points and a lot of injuries on this side because, yeah, like I said, we would have made this Dolphins -2 here.
Absolutely. And so do we have a model pick? I mean, I don't want you to give away any official stuff because we're going to get into our official picks, but does the model have a lean on this -2?
Yeah, so we were talking about this earlier. At this point in the season, our model is pretty in line with odds makers. Where I think we differentiate a little bit is we lean the Miami spread just a tad more than other models and other odds makers. And that's because we're looking at the Bills side and we're looking at the box scores and their winning streak, and we're not confusing it with statistically good performances, which I think they're lacking on, and our model is recognizing that as well. So we see Miami, we slightly lean for Miami to cover here.
All right. And by the way, if you're in the chat and you have a question about this game, I'll tell you right now, we're going to get into our official picks. And then, of course, we're going to do the gem. We're going to do all of that stuff. But if we don't cover a player that you're wondering about, please feel free to put it in the chat. I'm going to toss it to Danny or Ken's or Proppy or Mike McClure. Mike, let me get you in here when it comes to the inactives here. I know you have a play on this game. We can get to that later. But do you you always say, one guy being out, even if he's a really important guy, it tends to not affect the line unless it's a quarterback. So when you run your model, and I know you're really running it not necessarily to play sides, you're usually more of a totals guy, but it is a guy like Jalen Waddle and Raheem Mostert as high impact as maybe some people think?
I personally do not think so, no. However, they have a teammate that is by far the most valuable quarterback in the league. They're more valuable than basically half of the quarterbacks in the league, which is Tyreek Hill. So Tyreek Hill definitely matters almost in certain matchups up to a full touchdown. In this one, Tyreek would have been worth 5 points. As far as Waddle and Mostert in the spot, I don't think it's worth more than about 1.5 to 2 points max. So when I look at it here, I have a pretty significant lean to the Bills side, make them up to 4.8 in this one. But yeah, I don't think that it's as big a deal when Tyreek is out there. If it were the other way around, it would be a massive deal. I think the other thing to consider here is both teams being locked into the playoffs. When you look at a team like Miami, I think it's pretty clear that McDaniel understands having a full complement of his weapons available is more important than playing a game at home. For him, for this specific team, I tend to agree with that as well. So, Miami this time of season, not exactly a big home field advantage. So I think you see that coming into play here quite a bit.
Very, very interesting. 4.8 seems like a pretty big edge, and we're going to get to our official picks in just a second. Of course, we're going to bring Danny and Proppy into the conversation. By the way, if you want to play those edges that Ken just talked about, that Mike McClure just talked about, by the way, is that who I think it is? Is that Goose? Proppy?
That's Goose. He's fired up. He loves this matchup. Sia, we're going to finish week 18 with a bang. He has a parlay. I don't mean to let the cat out of the bag, literally and figuratively, but he has a parlay that he just finished. So he came over just to tell me that he's fired up. We just submitted it to producer Jake. It's going to hit tonight.
The goose and the donkey. By the way, that was a beautiful way with words there, Proppy. I'm very, very impressed. And by the way, impressed with Goose not ever missing a meal. Okay, if you want to make some of these bets that we're about to give you, BetMGM has all the action for every sports fan. New BetMGM customers can sign up today and get a first bet offer up to $1,500. If your first bet loses, you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets with code EDGE1500. That's EDGE1500. All right, Proppy, we got to get to your pick, but I got to do this first. Before we get to your official pick, and before we get to all of our official picks, before we get to the donkey and the goose and the first touchdown score, Danny, I haven't heard from you yet, and that's on me. I got to ask you, how's your day gone so far, and how you doing right now?
It's going pretty good, Sia. I was taking a lot of upset picks, a lot of teams that needed to win, betting the angle that they would not get it done, and tried on the Panthers. Didn't quite get that one, had all the chances in the world, but then was successful in the Titans. It's been a wild week 18 so far, and just kind of trying to bet some of the wacky, expect the unexpected angles. So it's been a lot of fun to watch.
A lot of fun to watch. And by the way, speaking of expect the unexpected, you know what I heard pre-show, everybody in the chat, who I know, hi, Ben Horner, I see you in there, who I know love golf and love all the golf picks that I put out and Mike McClure puts out and the whole SportsLine team. I heard that Danny Braska was live betting the century. Truly, like in the most degenerate way possible. The guy was like running parlays and outrights and up until basically like a few minutes before we went live. So I think, Danny, can we welcome you to the golf betting world?
Yes, see, it gets way worse in terms of the degenerate spectrum than you even know. I've recently gotten into cricket as well. So I was parlaying live top 10 scorers with live cricket run lines. This is nothing that I would ever put out on SportsLine or suggest to any of our members. So please don't tail those.
Yeah, that's a degen mode that I can't even subscribe to, but I respect it. All right, prop stars. Finally, let's get to your pick. It involves quarterback Josh Allen, but not his arm, his legs.
Yeah, we're gonna back Josh Allen tonight. First and foremost, I do want to just briefly touch on the game itself from a soft skill capping standpoint. I really like Buffalo in this spot. We've just seen them really kind of handle Miami earlier in the season. Miami just has really struggled every time they've played a viable opponent as well. Outside of Dallas, who we know hasn't been the best road team, they really have not been able to get a significant victory. So, yeah, I just think the spot for Buffalo, really with this hyper-conservative offense. I mean, look at Miami's, list of inactives. I just think Buffalo is set up nicely here. So I think they're going to ultimately win this game. But, yeah, as far as my prop is concerned, I love Josh Allen tonight. Over 7.5 rushing attempts. We've seen Josh Allen run the ball a lot more in the second half of the season than he was in the first half of the season. That is in large part due to, in my opinion, him being healthier than he was, coupled with the fact Joe Brady taking over play calling from Ken Dorsey. Under Joe Brady, Allen is averaging over 10 rushing attempts per game. That is not accident. That is by design, in my opinion. We've seen the Bills really shift to a hyper-conservative offense where they're really running the football, keeping the opposing team off of the field, sustaining long drives as well. So I like this spot for Josh Allen. We've also seen there is empirical evidence that suggests that in meaningful games, playoff games, games where there's stakes, he tends to run the ball more than he does in other less meaningful games. So, yeah, I think this is a good spot to bash Josh Allen over 7.5 rushing attempts tonight.
Absolutely love it. And we're going to get to my prop, which involves rushing as well, but we're talking about a different player. By the way, Ben Horner in the chat, he says, any thoughts on Durham Smythe? His receiving prop is around 24.5, and I'm wondering if he's primed for a decent game without Waddle. Well, Ben, if memory serves, that's an obscure player, but there was somebody at SportsLine that had the Durham Smythe prop over last week in his receiving yards. I'm trying to remember. Oh, that's right. It was me. And it was 18.5. So now we have clicked it up to 24.5. It's 25.5 in some places. I think you can go right back to it. This is one that I actually looked at. And by the way, if anybody else has any comments on Durham Smythe, please feel free to enter the fray here. But here's the thing. I do think the Bills defense is playing a little bit better. I mean, I think we see objective data behind that, but Durham Smythe will be in the middle of the field, and he's surpassed this mark, 24.5, 25.5, wherever you can get it, in 3 games in a row now. Without Waddle, we don't have a 1-for-1 from Waddle to like Cedric Wilson, for example. He'll get his touches. Maybe Braxton Berrios gets an extra look. But Durham Smythe, he doesn't get a ton of targets, but he's so unbelievably efficient with the targets. He's finding himself open. And by the way, his ADOT, he's down the field a little bit. So if he gets 2 catches, he is going to pass this 24.5 receiving yard prop. Ben, I think this is a good find. And I don't mind, even though we're getting basically, a pretty big increase from 18.5 to 24, 25.5. I don't mind that play at all. All right. I think it's probably a good time to get to my pick. And then Danny, you've got 2 picks to give out. So let me do mine. So I'm going to go with James Cook here. He's a guy that if you look in the last, it sounds like Chris Collinsworth or John Madden. Here's a guy. The last 2 games, he's been pretty underwhelming. Yards per carry, 3 in one, 3.5 in the other. That's not what we're looking for. But first of all, ever since Ken Dorsey left, he has been very good. He has been a focal point. I think he's going to be a focal point here too. And when you consider the injuries on the Dolphins side, you've got their edge rushers who happen to be pretty good run stoppers as well. You've got guys on the back end that are injured. I think we're going to see more of a bend, don't break defense from the Miami Dolphins. And I think we're going to see James Cook probably with 15 or 16 rushing attempts. Now, his rushing attempts prop is 14.5. I think that's a tick low, and I almost took the over there, but I think it's 13.5 actually. But I'm going to take the over in rushing yards because I do think he's going to find some lanes, especially if you have Josh Allen running. I think that's going to open up some more lanes, even more lanes for James Cook. So even though he hasn't been very good over the last 2 weeks, if you take a longer term approach, last 6-7 weeks, he has been that guy. And I think this is really depressed. This 60.5, it's really depressed because of the last 2 weeks. To me, it should be at least 63.5. Maybe even higher. So I like the over James Cook rushing yards in this one, especially if you consider this is a positive or neutral game script, which I expect it to be in large part. All right, James Cook over. That's mine. Danny Brasco, I just talked a lot. You've got 2 picks. One of them, I think our entire show backs. And frankly, because you're such a contrarian bettor, it's borderline surprising that you're on this because I would almost automatically think you'd be on the other side, but I'm with you. It sounds like Mike McClure is with you. It sounds like Ken's probably with you. Now you can start with either pick you want here. One of them is kind of contrarian. One of them not so much. Talk to us.
Let's talk about the one that seemingly we're all on, that the whole world is looking like they're on. Public and the pros, all the money is on the Buffalo Bills tonight. And I took them by margin at -3. The line's down to -2.5 now. Excuse me. And it's about even money here. I actually think they can cover this, and I'm willing to take the push condition at 3 even. I like the Bills here for a number of reasons. One, Mike McClure mentioned a lot of the angles in which the Dolphins might take it easy and take their foot off the gas if the game script plays itself out in that way. I mean, look at all the injuries they have on both sides of the ball. Tua is even playing banged up. People don't realize that. He's had a number of injuries he's dealt with this year. We've seen them become a lot more one-dimensional, losing half of that wide receiver duo. And Tyreek Hill, as dangerous as he is, it looks like he's tweaked his ankle about 25 times this season. He hasn't been quite right. When he is, he's the most dangerous receiver in football. When he's not, the Dolphins are severely limited. And without Raheem Mostert as well, it's going to put a lot of pressure on A-Chain. A pick that you just made, Sia, I really like with James Cook over rush yards is a lot of the reason I like the Bills tonight. They have this newfound ground attack, this rush-focused identity that takes a lot of the onus away from Josh Allen and need to make that hero ball play every time. And if they can control the clock, control possession, I think that the Buffalo Bills can control this game behind James Cook, behind Josh Allen, like Proppy's alluding to, taking off using his legs. He loves to do that in prime time. So I think the Bills have a game plan to defeat a Dolphins team here, steal the AFC East. I think they just are going to want it more as well. So give me the Bills to cover by -3. I like the 2.5 as well, but I like the 3 for even money, basically. And I guess I'll segue right into my other pick, which is on the total. And I'm going to take the under. Looking at the total here, I mean, look, if you've been betting primetime unders this season, you've been doing well. They're hitting at a 62% clip. That's pretty much a gold mine in sports betting. So got to keep hitting it. This total's on the move. I actually got it myself at 49.5. I went to go put it out on SportsLine, and it moved to 48.5. Went all the way down to 48, ticked back up to 48.5. That's where I took it and put it out again. And I think because of that ground-focused attack, It's going to bleed clock. The Bills have gotten a lot healthier and a lot better on defense. The addition of Rasul Douglas has really shaped out that secondary. Daquan Jones is back on the defensive line. He really shores them up there, and they're just getting healthier at every level, playing pretty well. The Dolphins, meanwhile, even though they're banged up, losing rushers Jalen Phillips, losing Bradley Chubb now, their secondary's gotten a little better, and they've been playing scrappy on defense. So I think they'll hang around and make this game competitive enough that it goes under the total with a game script like I mentioned. So give me the Bills, give me the under, Sia.
Yeah, I agree with you on the game script. I think we're going to see a lot of running from both sides of the ball. A couple questions in the chat, although I should reference a comment from Steve Lochner earlier. He said, hey, we only have 86 likes and we have almost 700 people watching. Let's just try something real quick. It's a little experiment, because usually when I'm like, hey, hit the like button, we get, like 20 to 50 people hitting the like button. Let's see in the next literally 30 seconds how far we can jump from 87 to whatever you guys make it. If we have almost 700 watching, let's just see how if everybody decides, hey, I'm just going to do it real quick. Let's see how far this experiment goes. Let's see if we can just get up to like 300 in a flash. It's really not hard. If you can't see the like button for some reason, it's because you need to take the chat down and then hit the like button. But let's just see in a flash how fast we can get up there. And by the way, Mackenzie, Ken's, it's your turn. And T-Ben has been waiting for your picks, because he's like, all right, well, what's the picks tonight, Ken's? So you're up. You've got 2 picks, and there's a Stephon Diggs question in the chat. I'm not going to lob it to you, Kenzie, but I just want that person to know that asked the question. I'm going to get to that pick because I think it's a very interesting number on him. Ken's, what are your 2 picks?
Yeah, it looks like the chat's been agreeing with some of my picks I was going to give out as well. We're going to Dalton Kincaid over 3.5 receptions here. I understand some people are, concerned with Knox playing as well, but I'm just going to simplify this. He's hit this over in 8 of his last 10. He's averaging almost 5 receptions in those 10 games. I think we get a little bit of a buy low moment here, because 2 weeks and 3 weeks ago, he did go below this. But other than that, this is a safety blanket for Josh Allen. I think great short, quick passes are going to work here. Again, you saw that list of Miami in going to work in Kincaid's favor. So I think he's someone Josh Allen looks to early in this game. Hopefully we won't be sweating this into the fourth quarter. And then I'm going to go to the other side here. We're going to go a little kicker prop here with Jason Sanders over 1.5 field goals made. Again, going back to that Miami injury list, right? I think the Bills have the capability to keep this team in front of them, eliminate the explosive plays. You have Achane, who's a bit limited. Tyreek Hill, not exactly 100%. Waddle's not here. So there's a good chance that this Bills defense can stop this team to field goals here. Sanders has had over 2 field goals or more in the last 4 games that they've played. I think a lot of that has to do with Tyreek Hill not being as explosive as normal.
T-Ben is your biggest fan. He says, lock. I love these plays. Let's ride. Proppy, go ahead.
I'd love to take that Stephon Diggs question if I could.
Yes. Please do. And just to set it up real quick, the question was about his receiving yards. And I got to say, as bad as he's been, and I'm not trying to steal your thunder, I just want to hand this off to you with some of my impressions. This number seems too low to me, but tell me if I'm wrong here. Go ahead, Proppy.
It's really fascinating. I was on Stephon Diggs last week. I came away after watching that game realizing, or at least believing, that there is something wrong with Stephon Diggs. He is not operating at 100%. Hasn't shown up on the injury report, but if we look at his snap count over the last 3 weeks, 46%, 60%, 65%. He has not been a full-time player in Buffalo's offense. Specifically, there was a drive in the second quarter where he did not come onto the field, and there was not an injury that was preventing him. The Bills also scored a touchdown on that drive. So the Bills are forcing the ball into his hands, and it is not working. So something is wrong as far as Stephon Diggs is concerned. I think he's definitely operating at less than 100%. I would caution everyone to stay away, even though the number is certainly appealing. Just do not have confidence in him being fully healthy right now, and he's not a full-time player in this Buffalo offense as a result.
Yeah, that's really interesting. When you talk about the snap percentage, that is very revealing in terms of, hey, maybe there's something actually wrong with Stephon Diggs. Nothing wrong with Chris Kirk, who in a extremely talent-ridden field won the century. So that's pretty amazing. Mike, I want to ask you, before you give out your official pick here, Cedric Wilson. Somebody asked you specifically if you're on Cedric Wilson tonight. To me, it seems a little touch and go with Cedric Wilson because he doesn't always get the targets, and the Waddle injury, it's not 1-for-1. We saw that last week too. With that said, 38.5, that's generally where his receiving prop has been, 37.5, 39.5. Any thoughts on Ced Wilson before you give your play out?
Not a ton of thoughts. I will say, what did you say the prop was?
Receiving yards, 38.5 for 7.
Yeah, so I'm slightly under that. I have him at 36. I would not feel comfortable playing the under personally, but I'm not on him at all. I do not have any exposure to him in DFS in the actual lineups that I've entered, believe it or not. So no, I would be off of said Wilson. And the other thing on Diggs, I want to point out also, he has 8 games this season without double-digit targets. Typically, a guy we're looking at that would have 80% of his games or more with 10-plus targets. He has 8 games without double-digit targets this year, 3 or 4 of them at just 5.
Very interesting.
Largely been an aftershare in the Joe Brady led offense as far as when he's taken over from play calling. Just he's seen his production just completely plummet, coupled with probably what is likely dealing with an injury. So for me, he's just a total stay away. As far as Cedric Wilson is concerned, I'm with Mikey here. I do feel the number is very efficient at 38.5. I will say, though, he has led this Dolphins teams in snaps over the last 3 weeks. He is on the field a ton, and we know they're throwing the ball quite a bit. Could be a high-volume passing attack tonight if they are potentially playing from behind. So if you are backing Cedric Wilson, I do like the fact that he is on the field for pretty much every single Tua drop back.
Hey, Proppy, before I get to Mike's official pick, I got to ask you something here, because Japan was all over. You know this because you were on the kickoff show at 12 with me, you, and Maestro. He was all over Khalil Shakir. And listen, I'm a huge fan of Khalil Shakir. In terms of his production, any thoughts on his receiving yards prop, which is 25.5? Japan was talking about having him as a touchdown scorer, laddering it up to like 60, 70, 80, 90. Either way, the 25.5. Any thoughts on Khalil Shakir?
I think 25.5 is an attractive number as far as he's concerned. I personally project him over 32.5 yards. So that's a pretty significant edge as far as my projections are concerned. I would prefer Dawson Knox to be inactive. The Bills tend to use a lot of heavy personnel when they do have both tight ends healthy, but Shakir has definitely earned snaps in this offense. And again, with Diggs just not being a reliable contributor, who is not on the field as a full-time player in this offense, we know Gabe Davis is never going to be a high-volume option as far as he is concerned. I think Shakir at over 25.5 is a pretty good look.
All right. Well, speaking of Shakir, he plays for the Buffalo Bills. Mike McClure, you've got a pick on the Bills. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, see, I like the Bills a lot here. You know, I've been on them a lot the last few weeks. I have them at a futures market, so I have some really heavy exposure to them to win the division, which is now winning this game on the money line. I laid it here on the spread 2.5. I also like it on the money line. The money line is actually the stronger play of the two at the current offerings in the market. You can find minus 140, minus 145, even up to minus 150. That's going to be between 59 to 60% implied. Again, I have this number up to 4.8 on the spread, which gives us a money line around 211, 212. That's about 67.5%. So again, you very rarely see an NFL money line 7-8% edge. I am heavily exposed to the Bills with this money line futures. All in on the Bills in this particular game. All
right. Before we get to the goose and the donkey, of course, that's the same game parlays from Mike McClure and from Proppy. Kenz, talk to me about the implications with the winner and the loser of this game. Obviously, we know that the winner wins the AFC East, but in terms of like the playoff scenarios, wild card weekend, what are we talking here?
Yeah, I just saw some people mentioning in the chat, like, well, what are we playing for? They're both in the playoffs. What's this mean? What's the urgency? I was on HQ earlier this morning, and with the SportsLine model, we were breaking down what the different paths would look like. So obviously, both these teams would get the 2 seed if they win. What that looks like for Miami is a 5% chance to win the Super Bowl, which relative is pretty high because you have those 2 home games, and then you play at Baltimore, and then you play the NFC champ. But if they go down to the 6th seed, it's a 66% drop-off chance to win the Super Bowl. That's because they play the first round in Kansas City, and Tua and the cold weather do not check out together. That's an absolute nightmare for him. So they have to go to Kansas City, then to Baltimore, and then finally make their way to the Super Bowl. So that's why the 6th seed is really, really daunting for that team. As far as Buffalo, really quick, again, 2 seed, they get those 2 home games. They're a 7% chance to win the Super Bowl. If they fall and get to the 7th seed, they have to go back to Miami to play Miami again. And then they have to go to Baltimore and then Kansas City likely. So again, a 50% drop off to win this. So there are huge implications here. These teams both really, really want that 2 seed and 2 home games.
Absolutely. As relieved as the Bills might be to actually be in the playoffs, because they didn't know they were going to be in the playoffs before this game necessarily, they still have a lot on the line to win the division. All right, Mike, I'm going to have you start with the donkey. Before we get there, though, let's just get our best bets up there real quick. We're going to do the donkey, we're going to do the goose, and then we're going to do our first touchdown scores, otherwise known as the gems. You can see it here. I mean, I've got the James Cook over. Ken's has Dalton Kincaid over 3.5 receptions. Sanders over 1.5 field goals. Danny Brasco under 48.5, and the Bills -3. Mike McClure also on the Bills. He's got it at -2.5 at -125. Josh Allen over 7.5 rush attempts for Proppy. And Larry, the Maestro's got the Bills -3 as well. So clearly we are invested in the Bills quite a bit here. All right, Mike McClure. Everybody is always clamoring for the goose and the donkey. You've got the donkey. Let's talk about it.
Yes, yeah, I've got several versions of the donkey, but for the donkey on the show here, we're going to start with the Buffalo Bills on the money line. Take the big alt spread on the Dolphins plus 12.5. Personally, I will say I have 17.5 is the key number I'm looking for on some of the other bigger ones that I'm playing. And then the under in the game, under 58.5 as well. I think the Bills eat a ton of clock in this one. And then the one lone player prop I'm investing in tonight is going to be a little bit of exposure to Gabriel Davis. This is a matchup for me where I do think Stephon Diggs commands a little bit of attention in addition to what Josh Allen can do with his legs. The divisional opponent knows that. They have to respect it. That's where I think we get a deep shot or two to Gabriel Davis here when Diggs is being locked up by Ramsey and others. I think this is a Davis spot. Put them all together, plus 425 over at MGM.
All right, plus 425 for the donkey. It's time now, Proppy, for the goose. And you've got Goose in your hands. Talk to us about what it's a she, right? What she dialed up.
He's a boy, but yeah,
a boy. Of course, it's a boy.
Yeah,
so sorry, Goose.
It's okay.
Right in front of him too.
Goose, he said accepts your apology, but yeah, Goose. It's rare when Goose finds odds greater than Mike's as far as the long shot is concerned here, but it has happened. There we go with the full screen. Thank you very much, Jake. First up, we got Josh Allen to throw at least one touchdown pass. Tua to throw at least one touchdown pass. Josh Allen to throw under 300 passing yards. Total points over 40.5. We're going to try to get cute with this one. Josh Allen, an anytime touchdown. I do think he's going to try to get in with his legs. And then we're going to try and middle this under 57 points. So over 41 points, under 57 points. I do think the game will ultimately land in that range. Put it all together, plus 525. Let's go. We're going to hit the donkey and the goose tonight.
Absolutely love that. Hey, Danny, before we get to the gem, I do want to kick something to you because you actually have the under 48.5 in this game. A lot of times I like to bet on pass attempts, pass completions. I noticed that Tua's pass attempts prop is 34.5. Josh Allen's pass attempts prop is 32.5. Any thoughts there? I only ask because if you think it's going to be a lot of running, which I tend to think as well, do you think maybe an under is in play when it comes to the pass attempts?
Yeah, perhaps. Perhaps for Josh Allen. I really do think the Bills will go back to that ground-focused identity and lean on James Cook, maybe even Latavius Murray, and Josh Allen himself will like to take off. It's a big game scenario. Like a lot of the narrative about the playoffs approaching and everyone wanting to rest up and stay healthy. That's the case, but they got to still go out and win this game. I mean, Ken's just broke down the implications it has, right? This 2 seed is everything. So I expect them to play hard-nosed football tonight behind the ground attack, and that could lead to an under on pass attempts. I'd lean towards the Josh Allen side. Also, Mike mentioned Gabe Davis, such a feast or famine, boom or bust kind of player, but that typically makes his yards total pretty suppressed, and I like his angle on the 30-plus. I put a half a unit myself on over 36.5 receiving yards, thinking, if they ground attack, eventually they hit him over the top and get a big play to Gabe Davis to catch that.
Yeah, I also think he's a prime candidate for like an alternate receiving yard total because he is so boom or bust. You can get him over 60 at, let's say, I'm throwing out a number like plus 350 or something like that. Proppy, go ahead.
There is such a stark contrast between Josh Allen's attempts in victories compared to his passing attempts in defeats. I'm talking like over a double-digit difference if we compare the two, especially with Joe Brady. We've seen the Bills will just completely abandon the run, even though they're hyper-conservative if it's a competitive game environment. We're talking like over 50 passing attempts, I believe, versus the Eagles and the other opponent where they lost. I believe it was against the Chiefs. Again, over 50 passing attempts in that game. So, yeah, if you're backing the Bills, he's likely to have a limited passing attempts. However, if the Miami is going to win this game or at least be leading for the majority of the game, he will air the ball out quite a bit.
Yeah, and I'm actually looking at Josh Allen's under completions as well at 22.5. Tua's is 23.5. I don't think I want to get involved there in case we're right about the negative game script. Josh Allen under 22.5 completions, I think it might be a play there. Kens, go ahead.
Anyone thinking about his interceptions at all? Minus 115, not too bad. He just keeps throwing them. You got to think simple here sometimes.
That's true. And what's interesting about that, and believe me, y'all, we'll get to the gems in just a second, is that each of them throwing over 1.5 touchdown passes. I thought it would be juiced higher, but it's minus 115 pretty much each way for Tua and for Josh Allen. I think that might speak to what Danny Brasco was saying in terms of, we're going to see a lot of running on both sides, because you would think in a dynamic game with a high total that we would see over 1.5 touchdowns at like minus 135 or maybe even minus 140. That's not what we're seeing across the market. So keep that in mind when you make your bets. Stephen Ruiz is asking for help. Wait, so under 32.5 Allen attempts or completions? I prefer the completions now that I've kind of thought it through with Danny and everyone, but I think we kind of both like each of those. I would, again, prefer the completions there. All right, let's get to the gems. Let's bring up our first touchdown scores. It's been a minute because we didn't have the show last Sunday because of obvious reasons, right? It was a holiday. Let's see who goes first. What's the rule again? Probably, can you clarify to me what's the rule on who goes first when we're picking the gem?
I can't seem to remember. Goose, do you recall what the rule is for the gem? Oh, it's whoever has the most gems. Looking at this, it's hard to tell. Looking at prop stars, Danny Brasco, Ken's. Sia, 1, 2, 3, 5 gems. Oh my goodness, that is so impressive. I had no idea you had done so well on the gem this season, Sia. So I will hand it over to you, and you have the first shot at this.
You mean I haven't reminded everybody every possible second that
I haven't heard it once, so this is news to me. I'm just blown away, and fantastic job. Tip of the cap, Sia.
All right, so let's try to go for 6 here, and we're going to do it with Durham Smythe. Like I said, I had the receiving yards prop on him last week. He hit it pretty early, and I do think they like to get him involved early. We've seen really over the last few games, he's kind of been down the field more than people think, but also he's been getting those receptions in the first half. So I really like Durham Smythe just down the middle of the field, opening things up with Tyreek Hill getting so much attention, with maybe the play action working really well to bring those linebackers, maybe those safeties up, because Devin Achane likely to have a pretty high impact in this game. Give me Durham Smythe as your first touchdown at plus 2,600. Absolutely love that. All right. Well, next up, Proppy, it's none other than yourself. And we haven't mentioned this guy's name. I actually think he can be pretty productive. I was even looking at some of his props earlier, like 3 hours ago. I didn't see them anywhere, so I just stopped looking. Talk to me about your first touchdown score.
Yeah, I'll get to that. First, I want to say I really like the Durham Smythe play. See, Durham Smythe has kind of been your Devontae Smith over the last few weeks there. So kudos to you. Jake will attest that I had 2 names that I like, Jeff Wilson and Durham Smythe. When I heard you were on Smythe, I decided to, instead of double up, pivot to Jeff Wilson. But yeah, I think this could be a potential spot for Jeff Wilson. Devon Achane has not been a beacon of health at all, and Jeff Wilson will definitely spell him at the very least if Achane is even healthy for the duration of the football game. I could totally see Achane being heavily utilized between the 20s and then potentially getting spelled as they get into the green zone or green area for Miami there. So yeah, I will take Jeff Wilson, who will be backing up Devon Achane tonight.
Absolutely love that. All right, Kens, you've only had a few cracks at this, and you actually hit this on your first crack at it, and then you posted a smack video, 24 hours later, which was incredibly epic. All right, so I like this guy. We just talked about him. Who's your first touchdown score?
Yeah, we're going to Gabe Davis here. Look, I like the idea of this Miami defense having a hard time early trying to adjust to all the injuries that they have. And one thing I've noticed with Gabe Davis is that he plays really well against zone coverage, and that's what Miami will likely be in tonight. He also scored against them back in week 3, so I think he can certainly do it again here. And I know Mike has a few words to say about it as well.
All right, yeah, Mike, back her up. Who's the first touchdown scorer?
Yes, that would be Gabe Davis. Again, I think he gets loose tonight, potentially early. I think the first deep shot down the field will be to Gabe Davis. I think it's going to be a ton of running the football, short area passing, 1 or 2 deep shots to Davis. So I like the matchup, and I like the price point here because he is on the field a lot.
All right, Danny Brasco. So I like Latavius Murray as much as the next guy, but I can see you already know Lat Murray, because you submitted this pick a while ago. It wasn't necessarily known that he was going to be inactive here. He is inactive, so I assume you have a pivot off Lat Murray.
Yeah, he's a healthy scratch. Coach's decision will not suit up. And full disclosure, I sent Jake the Snake my first TD score pick as James Cook plus 950. He said, Danny, it's only your 3rd time on a Sunday night show. Those ain't the rules. It's got to be plus 1,000 or longer. So I went in with another big boy running back, thinking maybe we'll get one in from the 1-yard line. He's inactive, so I'm not changing that narrative. The pick is now Leonard Fournette, plus 3,100. Leonard Fournette.
Very
Love
interesting.
it. Love it. That's what I almost said originally, yeah. Heavy Fournette tonight.
Nice.
Out of curiosity, Mike, do you have Fournette in any of your DFS, your showdown lineups?
Yeah, almost every single one of them, yeah.
Gosh.
What prop you speculated on with Wilson, you obviously lose a ton of touchdown equity because of Josh Allen's rushing ability. They're in the playoffs. They're playing again next week. I don't think James Cook touches the football in the red zone. I honestly don't. I think that's where Leonard Fournette's going to come in and take some of the extra hits.
James Cook has not had a carry inside the 5-yard line since week 8.
Yeah.
Wow. So those anytime touchdowns that everybody has cooked up for James Cook, maybe lay off. For my prop, I just want him to be successful between the 20. So I really don't care if he scores a touchdown or not. All right. Well, let's get the best bets up one more time. And as we're doing that, maybe let's go through the one thing maybe you're going to have your eye on for this game, whether it's something you're looking forward to or something you want to consider because you might be live betting this game, whatever it is. Bills, Dolphins. It starts in 12 minutes. Danny Brasco, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, just for posterity, I got to give some Dolphins angle because, man, it's a lot of Bills tonight. If we're looking on the other side of the ball, I kind of like Devon Achane over 26.5 receiving yards. Obviously, he's going to be a focal point of their offense. And if they try to do their creative running schemes, the Bills stack the box. Maybe they hit him with a couple screen passes or look to get him involved in the short passing game. Since he's come back from injury, his target share has gone way up. You see games where he's even got 9 targets. So perhaps he can go over this number if they try to get involved as a dual back today. Give me Achane over receiving yards.
Very interesting. Ken's, go ahead.
Yeah, to that point, I actually looked at Achane anytime touchdown as one of my best bets too, because he's a receiving threat and a rushing threat. He will be the main guy on the field tonight. So I think he's going to get plenty of action as well. As far as the Bills, just curious to see how Josh Allen reacts to how he's been performing, which statistically he's been under 200 passing yards the past 3 games, 2 passing touchdown to 2 interception ratio. It feels like he's kind of become like a goal line running back and a game manager a little bit. So I wonder if the big Hollywood lights is going to put pressure on him to maybe work on his passing game more, or if he'll keep it conservative tonight.
All right, Proppy, what does Goose have his eyes on tonight?
I have quite a bit of exposure. Tyreek Hill winning Offensive Player of the Year. I actually think he needs to put a stamp on this game in order to seal up that award. Reason being, CeeDee Lamb has gone absolutely nuclear in the second half of the season. Had a fantastic performance today against your Commanders, Sia, after really a career best game against Detroit, where he went for nearly a quarter of 1,000 yards against the Lions. CeeDee Lamb has had an absolutely unbelievable season. If Tyreek Hill gets swallowed up here or does not factor into this game, CeeDee Lamb could very well win the Offensive Player of the Year. That was a big afterthought considering where his odds were midway through the season. So that is something I'll personally be paying close attention to.
By the way, we knew who CeeDee Lamb was playing today. You didn't need to boldface it and embarrass me any further than I've been embarrassed. Oh,
Sia, my equals. So yeah, when my Eagles are crumbling, I feel more comfortable being a Commanders fan at the moment. So I had to get a shot in at some point.
Sia, do you
Proppy are down
remember
so
when?
bad.
Do you remember
It's
when
been
we
tough, Kevin.
showdowned on this show? The Eagles were plus 3.5 dogs, and the Cowboys rinsed them. And since then, it's been Crumble City in Philadelphia.
That's absolutely right. And by the way, speaking of Tyreek Hill, Proppy, you remember when we did our preseason show, I had Tyreek Hill to lead the league in receiving yards at 10-1. Looks like that one is going to cash instead, unless he runs backwards for a football field or two today. Mike McClure, what do you got your eyes on tonight?
It is very clearly the Bills night for me. It's very, very, I have a lot of exposure to the Bills winning this game outright. So that's what I'm looking at. I want to see how they utilize everyone on both sides, though. I think this game is still far, far more critical for Buffalo. Just running through the scenario, Buffalo doesn't win this game. You've got to play in the exact same building next week against a much better team next week when Waddle and Mostert are back. So that's going to be heavy there. And if you win this game, your prize, you get the Pittsburgh Steelers at your own home building. All you got to do is score 17 points. You win that game. And then you get to play another home game against Kansas City or potentially Miami. So, yeah, I think it's far more critical on the Buffalo side. This is their Super Bowl tonight, and I have betted accordingly.
I mean, I'm a Mason Rudolph truther, and even I don't think he has a chance against either of these two teams on the road. And I really am, by the way, anybody who's been following me lately. All right, let's wrap it up then. We still have, 7 minutes to go before we have kickoff. It's been an unbelievable show. So, I'm so glad the chat was so involved with the questions. We tried to answer every single one of them. That's what we're going to try to do, really every Early Edge show, but particularly these evening shows, and we're going to be firing them up, of course, through the playoffs, wild card weekend next week. We're going to have a lot of probably extra shows for stuff like that as well. It's been fun. On behalf of Ken's Brooks, Danny Brasco, Mike McClure, Prop Stars, and Goose. And don't forget about Jake the Snake on the 1s and 2s and 9s and 10s. This is the Early Edge. I am the counselor, and we rest our case.